The Aline Desert stretched endlessly under the scorching Arabian sun, its ancient silence broken only by the whisper of wind across dunes that had witnessed centuries of secrets buried in their depths. For 3 days, unprecedented rainfall had transformed the landscape, washing away the careful concealment that powerful hands had arranged 6 months earlier. The desert, like truth itself, had its own timing for revelation. Khalil ibn Rashid guided his scattered flock along the old caravan route, his weathered eyes scanning the horizon for strays. Something unnatural caught his attention, fabric protruding from what appeared to be a shallow depression. His calloused hands brushed away wet sand and small rocks, expecting to find discarded camping equipment. Instead, his fingers encountered skin, then the unmistakable curve of a human face. Marissa Cruz stared up at the vast sky with lifeless brown eyes, her delicate fingers still clutching desert stones in a final, desperate struggle for survival that had lasted far longer than any human should endure. Her traditional Filipina cross necklace caught the harsh morning light, a small silver beacon against skin that told the story of her final hours. The position of her hands suggested she had clawed at the sand above her face, fighting for breath as the desert slowly claimed her life. This was murder disguised as vanishing. 6 months earlier, Emirates Hills, Dubai's most exclusive residential enclave, housed the kind of wealth that reshaped skylines and influenced government policy. Within the Al-Fahim family compound, Marissa Cruz adjusted her crisp uniform in the servants' quarters mirror, checking her reflection with the practiced precision of someone who understood that survival depended on perfection. At 26, Marissa carried the dreams of 3 generations on her shoulders. She had arrived in Dubai 18 months earlier with a nursing diploma from Cebu University and a heart full of hope for her family's future. Her small room contained the artifacts of sacrifice, photographs of younger siblings whose education depended on her Dubai salary, receipts for money transfers that consumed 80% of her income, and a worn Bible that provided comfort during the city's long, isolated nights. Marissa's intelligence extended far beyond her employer's recognition. She spoke Arabic with careful pronunciation that charmed the family while concealing her university education. Her nursing background made her invaluable for managing the family's complex medical needs, granting her access to private moments that most domestic workers never witnessed. She managed Sharifa's anxiety medications, provided care for Zaki's elderly diabetic mother, and had become indispensable in ways that extended far beyond her official duties. Sheikh Sami Al-Fahim had built his empire through strategic marriages and oil partnerships, understanding that reputation was the only currency that truly mattered in Emirati society. At 55, he ruled his family with iron control exercised over business dealings that influenced governments across continents. The Al-Fahim name carried weight in boardrooms where trillion-dollar energy contracts were negotiated, but that influence depended entirely on maintaining an image of traditional values and family honor. The family villa stood as a monument to power. Italian marble floors reflected gold fixtures that caught Dubai's eternal sunshine, while Persian rugs worth millions anchored spaces designed to impress international partners. Every detail reflected centuries of evolution from Bedouin traders to petroleum aristocracy, with traditional patterns incorporated into contemporary luxury. Sharifa Al-Fahim embodied the balance of international education and traditional values that defined contemporary Emirati royalty. Sorbonne-educated with degrees in international relations, she managed charity foundations with $50 million budgets, while maintaining absolute control over family reputation. Her intelligence made her dangerous in ways that extended far beyond social ostracism. She understood exactly how to eliminate threats to family stability without leaving evidence. Sami Al-Fahim represented the dynasty's carefully planned future. Oxford-educated with degrees in international business and petroleum engineering, he possessed natural charisma that charmed international partners while respecting traditional customs. At 30, he carried unlimited expectations and constant pressure to prove worthy of inheriting an empire built on strategic alliances and political marriages that influenced global energy markets. His engagement to cousin Amal wasn't romantic arrangement. It was a multi-billion-dollar merger disguised as tradition. The union would cement oil contracts worth hundreds of billions, strengthen political connections influencing OPEC policies, and ensure Al-Fahim influence extended through the next generation. The forbidden attraction began during a family medical emergency that revealed Marissa's true capabilities. When Zaki's elderly sister Fatima suffered a severe diabetic crisis during a family gathering, collapsing while international guests watched in horror, Marissa's nursing training took precedence over social protocols. She immediately recognized the symptoms, administered emergency glucose, and stabilized Fatima's condition while paramedics were summoned. Sami witnessed her calm competence under pressure, the way she took charge while others panicked, and for the first time he saw her as more than invisible household staff. He recognized her intelligence, professional skill, and the sacrifice that had brought her thousands of miles from home. Their eyes met across the chaos, and something shifted between them that would prove impossible to ignore. Their first real conversation happened 3 days later in the villa's library at midnight, when Sami discovered Marissa reading classical Arabic poetry while managing his grandmother's overnight care. Her insights into medieval literature surprised him, and her dreams of returning to nursing school revealed ambitions beyond domestic service. These stolen moments created intimacy that transcended the social gulf between their worlds, planting seeds of destruction that would ultimately consume them both. The first month unfolded like a fever dream wrapped in silk and shadows. Sami left poetry books in Marissa's supply closet, their pages marked with verses from Rumi that spoke of souls recognizing each other across impossible distances. She responded by preparing his grandmother's favorite adobo during family dinners, the scent of her childhood filling rooms where she wasn't supposed to exist as anything more than invisible hands serving endless needs. Their meetings happened in the villa's hidden arteries, service corridors that connected kitchen to library, garden paths obscured by date palms where security cameras couldn't penetrate, and the midnight library where ancient Persian texts provided cover for conversations that grew more dangerous with each whispered confession. Sami discovered that Marissa had memorized entire passages from Khalil Gibran, while she learned that beneath his privileged exterior lived a man who questioned everything his birthright demanded. By the second month, stolen glances had evolved into stolen hours. The family's beach house in Jumeirah became their sanctuary during Sharifa's charity luncheons, where Marissa's absence went unnoticed among the chaos of catering 12 prominent wives who discussed everything except the foreign women serving their sparkling water. They made love on private sand that cost more per square meter than most people earned annually, their bodies salt-stained and desperate as waves erased the evidence of their presence. Sami's engagement to a mall represented more than family tradition. It was a merger worth $300 billion in oil concessions spanning the Rub al-Khali Desert, where unexplored reserves could reshape global energy markets for 50 years. Their wedding would cement political alliances from Riyadh to Doha, creating a petroleum dynasty capable of influencing OPEC policies and international energy prices with coordinated precision that governments had spent decades trying to achieve. Marissa understood the mathematics of her own destruction. Foreign domestic workers caught in romantic scandals faced immediate deportation to countries where unemployment meant starvation for entire extended families. Her visa existed at the Al-Fahim family's pleasure, renewable annually based on performance reviews that could be weaponized into character assassination. One accusation of inappropriate behavior would end not just her career but her siblings' education, her parents' medical care, and her own future in any Gulf country where background checks revealed her disgrace. The physical relationship intensified their emotional dependence beyond rational calculation. Desert house weekends became routine when family business took the Al-Fahims to Abu Dhabi or international meetings that lasted days. Sami would claim illness or urgent local commitments, while Marissa arranged household maintenance that required her presence at remote properties. They drove through empty highways toward Liwa Oasis, where traditional hunting lodges provided privacy that money couldn't buy in Dubai's surveilled luxury. Under stars that had witnessed centuries of forbidden love, they created their own universe where class meant nothing and cultural boundaries dissolved into irrelevance. Sami spoke of defying his father's expectations, choosing love over legacy, building a life in Europe where their children could grow up free from tribal politics and petroleum contracts. Marissa allowed herself to believe in futures that extended beyond sending money home, imagining clinics in remote Filipino provinces where her nursing skills could save lives, rather than merely maintaining the health of people who viewed her as sophisticated medical equipment. But the villa's other staff had begun noticing inconsistencies that suggested secrets being kept. Fatima mentioned Marissa's unusual familiarity with Sami's preferences, her confident responses to questions about his schedule, and the way she moved through family spaces with growing comfort rather than proper deference. Security guard Ahmad reported unusual movement patterns during night shifts, gaps in coverage that could indicate unauthorized access to restricted areas. Sharifa's intelligence network extended far beyond official family security. The matriarch maintained relationships with domestic staff across Emirates Hills, creating informal surveillance systems that monitored potential threats to family reputation. Anonymous reports reached her about a Filipino maid who had been observed in areas beyond her duties, whose behavior suggested inappropriate comfort with family routines that should remain mysterious to hired help. The pregnancy hit like a lightning strike during the 3rd month. Marissa missed her period while calculating medication schedules for Sami's diabetic grandmother. The irony bitter that her nursing training made denial impossible. Morning sickness struck during breakfast preparation, forcing her to disguise nausea as food poisoning from kitchen duties that required tasting family meals before service. She began wearing looser uniforms and adjusting work schedules to avoid family scrutiny during vulnerable moments. Research into UAE abortion laws revealed the impossibility of her situation. Unmarried pregnancy meant automatic deportation, while termination procedures required male guardian consent she couldn't obtain. International medical options were financially impossible, and black market alternatives carried risks of death or imprisonment that terrified her more than discovery. Anonymous threats reached Filipino community leaders, warning about domestic workers who endangered their entire expatriate population through inappropriate behavior with Emirati families. These messages carried the subtle menace of organized intimidation designed to isolate troublemakers from community support, leaving them completely vulnerable to employer retaliation. As physical changes became harder to hide, Marissa realized time was running out. Each day brought new risks of exposure, while growing life inside her made concealment increasingly impossible. She was trapped between choices that meant destruction. Revealing the pregnancy would end both their lives, but hiding it was becoming physically impossible. The golden cage was closing around them both. Sharifa's eyes were like surgical instruments, dissecting every detail of Marissa's appearance during the morning briefing about her mother-in-law's medications. The loose-fitting uniform couldn't hide the subtle changes anymore. Fuller cheeks, altered posture, and the way Marissa unconsciously placed her hand on her stomach when she thought nobody was watching. Most telling was her sudden aversion to the strong Arabic coffee that had been her morning ritual for 18 months, now replaced with weak tea that barely masked her nausea. "You look tired, Marissa," Sharifa observed with predatory precision. "Perhaps you need medical attention. Family doctors are very thorough in their examinations." The matriarch's intelligence network had been busy. Kitchen staff whispered about Marissa's altered eating patterns, her frequent trips to the bathroom, and her mysterious absences during afternoon prayer times when the family gathered for traditional ceremonies. Security guard Ahmad mentioned gaps in surveillance footage that coincided with Sami's claimed evening walks, while housekeeper Miriam noted expensive perfume lingering in areas where only service staff should venture. Zaki received the preliminary reports during his Thursday morning security briefing, a weekly ritual where potential threats to family reputation were cataloged and eliminated with clinical efficiency. The photographs showed Marissa entering service areas where Sami happened to be present, timestamp analysis revealing patterns that suggested coordination rather than coincidence. Most damning was footage from the beach house's perimeter cameras, capturing 2 figures walking together in areas off-limits to household staff. The Al-Fahim patriarch's response was immediate and devastating. Phone calls to Amal's father revealed growing impatience with wedding delays that had pushed the ceremony back twice for unexplained scheduling conflicts. Political allies expressed concern about Al-Fahim family stability after rumors circulated about internal disagreements affecting their business judgment. Most critically, 3 major energy contracts contained morality clauses that allowed termination if family scandals compromised their partners' reputations in conservative markets. Sami's world began collapsing from multiple directions simultaneously. His father's summons arrived through formal channels, not family communication but official business correspondence that signaled the gravity of their conversation. The meeting took place in Zaki's study, surrounded by photographs of oil ministers and defense contractors whose partnerships depended on Al-Fahim reliability and traditional values. "You will end this immediately," Zaki declared without preamble. "The girl's pregnancy threatens everything our family has built across 3 generations." The words hit Sami like physical blows. His father's intelligence network had penetrated their most careful secrets, documenting evidence that could destroy them both. Torn between protecting Marissa and preserving his family's empire, Sami made desperate calculations about defying his father through public acknowledgement of their relationship and his unborn child. Late-night research sessions revealed the impossibility of his situation. UAE family law offered no protection for foreign domestic workers in relationships with local nationals, while international human rights frameworks provided theoretical coverage with no practical enforcement mechanisms. His meetings with European lawyers in coffee shops far from family surveillance confirmed that legitimizing their relationship would require fleeing the country permanently, abandoning inheritance worth billions, and facing potential criminal charges for violating cultural protection laws. Sharifa moved with surgical precision to confirm her suspicions. The family doctor received instructions to conduct comprehensive health examinations for all household staff, disguised as routine medical care required by labor regulations. Dr. Hassan al-Mansouri had served the Al-Fahim family for 20 years, understanding exactly which examination results required discreet handling and which discoveries never appeared in official records. Marissa's pregnancy test confirmed what Sharifa's experience had already diagnosed. The ultrasound revealed 12 weeks development, timing that aligned perfectly with surveillance reports documenting Sami's irregular behavior patterns. The matriarch's strategic planning began immediately. Phone calls to security contractors who specialized in family complications that required permanent solutions without legal complications. The confrontation erupted during Thursday evening prayers, when family tradition demanded honesty between blood relatives about threats to collective honor. Zaki presented the evidence methodically. Photographs, medical confirmation, and testimony from household staff who had been pressured into revealing observed conversations between Sami and Marissa. "You have 48 hours to eliminate this threat," Zaki announced with the calm finality of someone accustomed to making life-altering decisions based on strategic necessity rather than emotion. "The pregnancy ends, the girl disappears, and your engagement proceeds on schedule. These are not negotiable terms." Sami's protests about love and personal choice were dismissed as romantic nonsense that powerful men couldn't afford. His inheritance, his future, and his family's continued prosperity depended on making the correct decision about expendable complications that threatened their empire. Marissa realized her life was in immediate danger when her passport mysteriously disappeared from her locked drawer. The villa's atmosphere had shifted into something predatory, with staff members avoiding eye contact and conversations ending abruptly when she entered rooms. Her phone calls to the Filipino embassy met with bureaucratic delays and appointment scheduling that pushed assistance weeks into the future. Her desperate attempt to reach Dubai International Airport was intercepted by security personnel, who appeared at the taxi stand with official-looking documentation claiming she was needed for immediate questioning about visa irregularities. The interception was professional and polite, but the underlying threat was unmistakable. She belonged to the Al-Fahim family until they decided otherwise. Her final phone call to Sister Carmen in Cebu was made from a borrowed phone in the villa's garden, hidden among date palms where surveillance equipment couldn't capture clear audio. Her voice carried the hollow quality of someone who understood that death was approaching with mathematical certainty. "If something happens to me," she whispered in Tagalog, "remember that I loved you all more than my own life. The baby deserves to be remembered, even if we can't be saved." The golden cage was closing around her with the inevitability of desert sand covering footprints, erasing evidence that she had ever existed at all. Sharifa's voice carried maternal warmth when she informed Marissa about the mandatory health examination required for all domestic staff. "The family clinic provides the best prenatal care in the Emirates," she explained with calculated kindness. "Dr. Al-Mansouri wants to ensure both you and the baby receive proper medical attention." The deception was masterfully crafted. Official-looking paperwork bore clinic letterheads and government stamps that suggested routine compliance with labor regulations protecting pregnant workers. Marissa's relief at finally receiving medical care for her condition overrode the survival instincts that had kept her alive through months of dangerous secrecy. Two distant Al-Fahim relatives, Fahad and Falis, arrived at dawn in a white Toyota Land Cruiser bearing fake medical transport plates. These men existed on the family's periphery, second cousins whose business failures and gambling debts had made them dependent on Zaki's financial support and completely disposable if complications arose. Their loyalty was purchased with threats and promises. Handle this situation quietly, or face bankruptcy and social exile from tribal protection systems. The vehicle had been prepared with surgical precision. GPS tracking systems were disabled. Registration numbers filed off and replaced with duplicates that traced to a car rental company that would report the plates stolen within hours. Interior surfaces had been treated with bleach solutions that would eliminate DNA evidence, while industrial plastic sheeting protected seats from biological contamination. Marissa climbed into the back seat wearing her best dress, a modest blue outfit she had purchased for church services and special occasions. Her small purse contained her rosary, vitamins she had bought secretly for the pregnancy, and photographs of her siblings that provided comfort during lonely Dubai nights. She carried hope instead of fear, believing that medical attention meant safety rather than death. The journey began through Dubai's gleaming commercial districts, past construction sites where Filipino workers built monuments to wealth they would never possess. Fahad maintained casual conversation about Dubai's rapid development, while Falis monitored radio communications with Al-Fahim security personnel who tracked their progress through the city's extensive surveillance network. As skyscrapers gave way to industrial zones and then empty desert highways leading toward Al-Ain, Marissa's maternal instincts triggered warning signals that her conscious mind refused to acknowledge. The medical facility's location seemed impossibly remote, the drive extending far beyond any reasonable distance for prenatal care in a city famous for luxury healthcare services. "Where exactly is this clinic?" she asked with growing unease, noting how the landscape had become increasingly desolate. "Specialized facility," Fahad replied without turning around. "Privacy is essential for family staff medical needs." Her first escape attempt came during a roadside stop when Falis claimed the vehicle needed mechanical attention. Marissa bolted toward the highway, screaming for help from passing vehicles that accelerated past the scene rather than becoming involved in apparent domestic disputes involving local men and foreign workers. Fahad's pursuit was brief and brutal, physical restraint that left bruises on her arms, and the final realization that medical care had been a lie designed to facilitate her murder. The desert location had been selected for its isolation from ancient caravan routes and modern oil exploration activities. GPS coordinates placed them 40 kilometers from the nearest paved road, in terrain where emergency cell phone signals couldn't penetrate and satellite surveillance was blocked by natural rock formations that created perfect concealment for activities requiring absolute privacy. The shallow grave had been excavated 2 days earlier, dimensions calculated to accommodate a human body with minimal soil displacement that might attract attention from aerial reconnaissance or wandering Bedouin tribes. Stones gathered from the surrounding area would provide concealment that appeared natural to casual observation while ensuring the burial remained undisturbed by desert scavengers. Marissa's final pleas carried the desperation of someone who understood that death was inevitable but still hoped for mercy that would never come. She promised absolute silence about her relationship with Sami, offered to disappear voluntarily to any country they chose, and begged for the life of her unborn child even if her own couldn't be spared. Her voice echoed across empty desert that had swallowed countless secrets over centuries of tribal warfare and family honor killings. Fahad and Falis wore body cameras that recorded the execution for family archives, evidence that the assignment had been completed according to instructions while providing insurance against future legal complications if either executioner developed guilt or attempted blackmail. The footage captured Marissa's final words, a prayer in Tagalog that asked forgiveness for her family's sins and protection for the baby whose life would end before beginning. The burial happened while she remained conscious, sand and stones covering her face, as she struggled with the strength that pregnancy hormones had given her body. Her fingers clawed at the earth above her mouth and nose, fighting for breath that came in shorter and shorter gasps until the desert finally claimed her life through suffocation rather than violence. The cover-up operation unfolded with military precision. The vehicle was driven to an industrial furnace outside Dubai, where high temperatures reduced metal and plastic to ash that left no forensic evidence. Tools were disposed of in different locations across the Emirates, scattered in ways that made recovery impossible even if investigators suspected their existence. Marissa's room was cleaned by professional services that specialized in eliminating trace evidence from crime scenes. Personal belongings were sorted into categories. Valuable items disappeared into black market channels, while photographs and religious artifacts were incinerated to prevent emotional complications if family members later discovered remnants of her existence. The missing person report filed with Dubai police described voluntary departure by a domestic worker who had violated visa terms through unauthorized employment outside her registered household. False witnesses provided statements about seeing Marissa at the airport with luggage, boarding flights to destinations that would make tracking impossible. Within 48 hours, the Al-Fahim family had resumed normal operations. Sami departed for an extended European business trip that placed him thousands of kilometers from potential questioning about his former lover's disappearance. Sharifa returned to charity luncheons and social activities that demonstrated her family's stability and continued commitment to traditional values. The engagement ceremony was moved forward by 2 weeks, creating positive news that overshadowed any speculation about missing household staff. Khalil's weathered hands shook as he dialed the Al Ain police emergency number, his voice cracking with the weight of discovery that would shatter carefully constructed lies. The desk sergeant's initial response reflected bureaucratic indifference toward Bedouin reports about desert finds that usually involved abandoned construction equipment or illegal dumping rather than human remains. Another dead animal, Officer Mahmoud dismissed without visiting the scene. Desert cleaners will handle removal on Monday. But forensic photographer Hassan Al-Zahra's documentation revealed details that transformed routine disposal into criminal investigation. Marissa's fingernails contained sand mixed with her own blood from clawing at the earth above her face, while fabric patterns indicated she had been buried in clothing rather than wrapped like traditional Islamic burial customs required. Most damning was the pregnancy discovered during autopsy, 13 weeks development that meant 2 lives had been destroyed instead of 1. International media erupted when leaked forensic photographs reached human rights organizations monitoring domestic worker conditions across the Gulf. The images of Marissa's cross necklace clutched in death-stiffened fingers became symbols of systematic violence against vulnerable populations whose disappearances had been ignored for decades. The Al-Fahim family's defense strategy deployed with the precision of military operations. London-based QCs specializing in diplomatic immunity arrived on private jets, while Swiss banking lawyers began moving assets to jurisdictions beyond UAE legal reach. Zaki claimed diplomatic status through ancestral tribal leadership positions that predated modern governmental structures, arguing that traditional authorities operated beyond contemporary legal frame. Evidence tampering occurred through political connections that reached into police leadership and forensic departments. Key surveillance footage disappeared from server backups, while witness statements were modified to eliminate references to family member involvement in activities preceding Marissa's death. Filipino community leaders received anonymous threats warning against cooperation with investigations that could result in mass deportations affecting thousands of workers. The breakthrough came from Hassan al-Rashid, the security contractor whose conscience finally overcame financial dependence on Al-Fahim family contracts. His preserved body camera footage provided irrefutable evidence of live burial, while GPS tracking data proved family vehicle involvement in transportation to the execution site. His documentation included detailed burial methodology and audio recordings of Marissa's final prayers. Works. I kept the files as insurance, Hassan confessed to human rights investigators. But watching that footage every night was destroying my soul. Philippines President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. demanded justice through diplomatic channels that threatened UAE trade relationships worth billions in overseas worker remittances and labor contracts. Ambassador Maria Teresa Lazaro's presentations to international forums documented patterns of domestic worker abuse that implicated government complicity through inadequate protection systems. Social media campaigns generated global attention that forced serious investigation despite Al-Fahim political influence. #JusticeForMarissa hashtags reached trending status across Southeast Asian countries where millions of workers faced similar vulnerabilities. International business partners began distancing themselves from Al-Fahim enterprises as reputational damage threatened their own market positions. Sami's psychological breakdown occurred during his third police interrogation, when investigators presented body camera footage of Marissa's execution alongside ultrasound images of their unborn child. His confession detailed family pressure and ultimatum circumstances that painted him as victim alongside perpetrator, torn between impossible choices that destroyed everything he claimed to love. "I should have died with her," he sobbed into recording equipment that captured genuine remorse alongside legal admissions. "Every breath I take is stolen from the life she should have lived." The trial proceedings attracted international observers from Amnesty International, Human Rights Watch, and UN special rapporteurs monitoring extrajudicial killings in authoritarian states. Dubai International Court became a theater where global attention focused on systematic abuse that powerful families had conducted with impunity for generations. Evidence presentation included body camera footage that forced courtroom evacuations when observers couldn't tolerate watching Marissa's final moments. GPS tracking data proved family coordination in transportation logistics, while forensic testimony established that live burial constituted torture under international conventions prohibiting cruel and unusual punishment. Political connections that had protected the Al-Fahim family for decades proved insufficient against overwhelming physical evidence and international pressure that made their prosecution inevitable. Guilty verdicts for murder, conspiracy, and human trafficking charges sent shockwaves through Gulf societies where powerful families suddenly faced accountability for crimes previously handled through financial settlements and victim intimidation. Zaki received life imprisonment for ordering execution. His oil empire transferred to government oversight pending asset recovery for victim compensation. Sharifa's 25-year sentence for conspiracy and evidence tampering destroyed her charity foundation reputation and social standing among elite women who abandoned associations that threatened their own families' reputations. Fahad and Falis faced death sentences for murder and live burial, their execution scheduled despite international appeals for clemency. Sami's 15-year sentence considered his cooperation with investigators alongside accessory charges that acknowledged his emotional manipulation by family pressure while maintaining accountability for enabling Marissa's death. The Al-Fahim business empire collapsed amid legal destruction and reputational damage that cost hundreds of billions in canceled contracts and frozen assets. Oil concessions were redistributed to competitors while political alliances dissolved as former partners sought distance from association with convicted murderers. Marissa's case catalyzed domestic worker protection legislation across Gulf Cooperation Council countries, creating legal frameworks that provided embassy oversight and emergency protection systems for vulnerable populations. International conventions strengthened expatriate rights while establishing monitoring mechanisms that made similar crimes harder to conceal. Cruz established the Marissa Cruz Foundation in Dubai, providing legal assistance and emergency shelter for domestic workers facing abuse or trafficking. The organization's annual Desert Memorial Service honors victims of power abuse while advocating for continued reform in legal systems that traditionally favored employers over foreign workers. Sami's letters from Al Sadr prison express lifelong guilt and remorse that will define his remaining years. His correspondence describes dreams where Marissa forgives him for choosing family over love, while nightmares replay her final moments with accuracy that suggests divine punishment for enabling her destruction. In the Al-Ain Desert, sunrise illuminates a marked grave where Marissa Cruz rests beside her unborn child. The memorial stone bears inscriptions in Arabic, English, and Tagalog, ensuring that multiple communities remember her sacrifice and the price of challenging systems designed to silence inconvenient truths. Desert winds carry prayers across ancient sand that has finally surrendered its secrets to justice.